Hello, I'm Ushigami, a 30-year-old Japanese man, and I am what people in Japan call a hikikomori, someone who completely withdraws from society, rarely leaving their home or interacting with others. The term originated in Japan, but similar people exist all over the world. I am also a NEET, which stands for Not in Education, Employment, or Training. The word comes from the UK, but again, NEETs exist everywhere. This video is a record of my life. How I, a hikikomori NEET, managed to make money without getting a job, got a girlfriend, thought I was finally rejoining society, and then ended up back in isolation. It's a story of both success and failure. Either way, I hope you'll stick around. Also, this is my real story, but I'm using a text-to-speech software instead of my own voice. Honestly, I can't stand listening to my own voice while editing. All right, let's get into it. Why I became a hikikomori. Let's begin with a question. How does someone end up as a hikikomori? Well, in my case, it all started with my childhood. I was raised by a strict and overprotective mother and a kind but emotionally distant father. My mother was obsessive and controlling. She constantly criticized me, never praised me, and strictly monitored everything I did. She also never let me do things on my own. If I tried to tie my shoes, she would do it for me. If I wanted to clean up my toys, she would clean them up before I could even try. She believed she was helping me, but in reality, she was stripping away my independence. In Japan, we call this type of parent a toxic parent, one that micromanages, controls, and criticizes their child, crushing their self-esteem and autonomy in the process. My father, on the other hand, was the opposite. He was kind, he would buy me things I wanted and take me places I wanted to go. But he was also uninvolved in my education and daily life. After work, he would just drink and sleep, never really paying attention to what was going on at home. Because of this imbalance, my mother was under constant stress, and that frustration had to go somewhere. When I was around 7 years old, my parents began having explosive arguments, shouting, breaking things, completely losing control. From what I could tell, they were arguing about my upbringing. My mother thought my father was too uninvolved, while my father thought my mother was too strict. It was terrifying. I was just a child. I had no way to escape, no way to fight back. At school, things weren't any better. I was socially awkward and never fit in. I was either excluded or lightly bullied. I wasn't beaten up or anything, but I was often mocked, made fun of, and left out. I had nowhere I belonged, not at home, not at school. Then, around that same time, I started developing OCD-like symptoms. I had an intense fear of forgetting things. I became obsessed with making sure I never forgot anything. Every night, I would check my school bag over and over for hours, making sure I had all my books, notebooks, and pencils. No matter how many times I checked, I couldn't feel safe. My parents didn't recognize this as a mental health issue. They never took me to a doctor, they just saw it as one of my weird quirks. By the time I turned 14, I started rebelling against my mother's strict rules. I punched holes in the walls of our house, got into violent fights with my parents, and even ran away from home at 16. I had nowhere to go, so I lived in internet cafes for a while. Around the same time, my OCD evolved into something else, a crippling fear of germs. I started washing my hands compulsively, sometimes for hours at a time until my skin was raw and bleeding. My OCD had gotten so bad that I couldn't even function. At that point, I knew I needed help. So I tried visiting a psychiatrist on my own. But in the region where I lived, if you were a minor, you couldn't receive psychiatric care without parental consent. So I was turned away every time. With nowhere else to turn, I started spiraling. I had reached my breaking point. I was so desperate, eventually I came up with a crazy idea. If I get arrested and sent to juvenile prison, maybe they'll treat my OCD. That was my logic at the time. So, in an act of complete desperation, I set my family's house on fire. Nobody was injured or killed, but it was still an incredibly dangerous act. Looking back now, I deeply regret it. I fully understand how reckless and unforgivable it was. But at the time, I saw no other way out. My mind was trapped in a state of complete desperation, and setting that fire felt like the only escape I had left. I was arrested immediately and sent to juvenile detention. Strangely, this ended up being a turning point for me. While I was there, a psychiatrist prescribed me medication for my OCD. I took it as directed, hoping it would help. But in the end, it did nothing. I saw no improvement at all. Instead, what actually made a difference was something else. During my time in detention, I read a book about exposure therapy, a technique for treating OCD. I decided to try applying it to myself, forcing myself to confront my fears instead of avoiding them. And to my surprise, my OCD symptoms improved gradually. After being released, I reconciled with my parents and decided to go back to high school. I enrolled in a new school, trying to get my life back on track. Surprisingly, things started off well. For the first time, I had a girlfriend. I made a few friends, and I even joined a rock band as a vocalist, covering American rock songs. Looking back, I was probably a bit too full of myself back then. I thought I was cool, but in reality, I wasn't a good singer at all. And as I mentioned earlier, I don't like my own voice now. Although I had the time of my life there, after 2 years, I dropped out again. At 20, I was finally diagnosed with ASD autism spectrum disorder. Suddenly, everything made sense. Why I had always struggled socially. Why I had such strong fixations on certain things. Along with the diagnosis, the government officially recognized me as disabled and issued me a Level 2 disability certificate, a classification indicating that my daily life was severely restricted. At 20, out of nowhere, I was suddenly labeled as a disabled person by my own country. But just because I now understood myself better, it didn't mean my problems disappeared. I still had no qualifications, no skills, no job prospects. I tried working a few part-time jobs, but I couldn't last more than 3 months at any of them. I realized that I wasn't cut out for regular jobs. So, after multiple failed attempts, I gave up and moved back home. That was the beginning of my 10-year Hikikomori life. Life as a Hikikomori. At first, it wasn't so bad. I had no responsibilities, no stress. I could just play video games and escaping into the internet. While playing online games, I started interacting with foreign players. At first, it was just simple exchanges, basic greetings and casual conversations. But over time, I became more interested in learning English and began teaching myself little by little. As I studied, I could feel myself improving, and it wasn't a bad feeling. Seeing my own skills grow gave me a small sense of accomplishment. But in the end, it was just another form of escapism, another way to avoid facing reality. As time passed, a sense of guilt and anxiety started creeping in. Is this really okay? Aren't I just wasting my life? I'm a burden to my family. At the same time, I started becoming hypersensitive to external stimuli. Every little noise outside started irritating me. The smells from the neighborhood felt unbearable. So I began closing all the windows, blocking out the world with loud music, and isolating myself even further. The more I withdrew, the worse it got. Days blurred together, and before I knew it, years had passed. My mother had grown old and was no longer the strict, overbearing woman she once was. She had become a quiet, gentle grandmother. Watching her age day by day, I realized that my long-held resentment had nowhere left to go. My parents had seemingly given up on me. They no longer said anything about my life as a shut-in. I never begged them for money, but I still ate their food every day for free. Of course, that still cost them something. And while I was grateful, a part of me couldn't help but think, you bear some responsibility for how I ended up like this. The longer I stayed inside, the harder it became to leave. My anxiety and depression grew worse. I knew I needed to do something. But I had no skills, no work history, no degree. I wasn't qualified for any job, and even if I somehow found one, I knew I wouldn't last. And to make things worse, because I hadn't paid into Japan's national pension system, I wasn't eligible for disability benefits despite my autism diagnosis. If my parents died, I'd be completely screwed. I had no idea how to escape. But then, in 2023, I discovered something that changed my life. Discovering AI and making money for the first time. Just when I was beginning to feel desperate, I came across news about generative AI, ChatGPT, which could answer almost anything, and Stable Diffusion, which could generate any image I asked for. I had found a new toy to escape from reality. I played around a lot with Stable Diffusion, at first just for fun. Then a thought hit me. Wouldn't people be willing to pay for AI-generated NSFW images? To be clear, I wasn't talking about illustrations. I was experimenting with highly realistic images of adult women. And I was right. Turns out, even if you clearly state that an image was AI-generated, there are still plenty of perverts willing to pay for it in Japan. For the first time in my life, I felt grateful to be born in this perverted country. Instead of playing video games all day, I kept my gaming PC running non-stop, using AI to generate images. I compiled them into photo sets, sold them on marketplaces, and repeated the process over and over. After a few months, I had made about 500,000 yen, around $3,500 at the time, given the weak yen. It wasn't a fortune, but for someone like me, who had been making zero income for years, it was life-changing. More than the money itself, what truly moved me was the fact that I had researched, created, and earned money all on my own. For the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I had a place in this society. People criticize generative AI for all sorts of reasons, but the truth is, for some of us, it has been a lifeline. But even though I had finally started making money, I burned out almost immediately. People think AI-generated images are effortless. Just type a prompt and let the AI do the work. But the reality was much more tedious. To actually sell products, I had to research the market, curate thousands of images, make countless adjustments, and spend every waking moment in front of my PC. It was exhausting. At the same time, more and more people had jumped on the AI image bandwagon, trying to make easy money. What was once a novelty was now oversaturated, and consumers were starting to lose interest. I sensed that the gold rush wouldn't last much longer, so I quit, diving into crypto and losing. But now I had $3,500 and no idea what to do with it. I had tried Forex trading before, but after making a bit of profit, I eventually lost it all. Stocks seemed like a safer option, but with my small capital, the returns wouldn't be significant. Online casinos? Not only were they illegal in Japan, but I had no reason to believe I could win. Starting a business? I had no experience, no ideas, and no clue where to begin. That's when I thought, what about crypto? I had seen stories of people who bought crypto early and turned their investments into 10x or even 100x profits. If I could get lucky, I wouldn't have to work ever again. Yeah, it was a stupid idea, but I was desperate. I started researching, and the first ecosystem I entered was Solana. Solana was newer than Bitcoin and Ethereum, but it was among the top 5 blockchains by market cap, known for its low fees and high-speed transactions. By the way, don't worry. I'm not trying to turn this channel into some crypto bro nonsense. I'm just telling my story. I joined a Japanese crypto community and followed their discussions. That's how I ended up buying my first meme coin. And of course, I got wrecked. Luckily, I had only put in $100, but it still hurt. I kept investing small amounts in various tokens, only to lose money again and again. But despite the losses, I found myself fascinated by the technology. If crypto could be properly integrated with real-world finance, it could be revolutionary. But for now, reality was just as the skeptics said, rife with scams and market manipulation. Even so, I couldn't walk away. Not because I had some brilliant investment strategy, but because I had nothing else to do. I had time, plenty of it. So I stayed glued to my screen, following the Japanese community's discussions, learning everything I could, $5 to $6,000 in one night. Then one day, the biggest project on Solana announced that it was about to launch its TGE token generation event. The hype was insane. People were expecting massive airdrops, potentially worth tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. For those unfamiliar, an airdrop is when a crypto project distributes free tokens to early supporters. Some people receive life-changing amounts of money just for being early adopters. But since I had joined too late, I wasn't eligible for the airdrop. Still, I kept watching. In the days leading up to the TGE, test tokens were being minted non-stop. There were rumors that a meme coin tied to the project might launch soon. Then something strange happened. A bug allowed people to buy what was supposed to be a test-only token. My community went crazy, and I happened to be lurking. Just as the discussion erupted, people were reporting that small amounts could be purchased. I decided to try. After several failed transactions, I somehow managed to buy just $5 worth. Rumors started circulating. What if this isn't just a test token? What if it's actually the upcoming meme coin? I went to bed that night filled with excitement. The next morning, I checked the Discord server for the project. Everyone was talking about the token I had bought. I tested if I could swap it for something else. It worked, and the price was insane. The developers confirmed that it was just a test token, but Dagon traders refused to believe it. The price kept climbing. It was surreal, a token with no utility. No purpose, no backing whatsoever was still gaining value. I cashed out as carefully as I could, and by the end of the day, my $5 investment had turned into $6,000, a 1-200x return. I wasn't even happy. I was just shocked. Was this real? Yes, it was. Both cryptocurrency and AI are often seen as shady, or even dangerous by the general public. But I realized that you can never truly understand their value until you actually use them yourself. Now I had even more money, but I still had no idea what to do with it. I exchanged some for Japanese yen, bought stocks, indulged in snacks and food, and then lost money trying leverage crypto trade on a new decentralized exchange. Lost money gambling on meme coins again. I had no experience managing money. I didn't know how to grow it. So it was only natural that a man who had suddenly come into an amount far beyond his means would start losing it little by little, finding love. And as my balance gradually shrank, a new feeling began to creep in: loneliness. So I started looking for friends, or maybe even a girlfriend online. Maybe, just like my previous attempts at learning English, this was just another form of escapism. And I met her, a woman living in Europe, who was studying Japanese at university. We hit it off. Our personalities, our values, everything clicked. We started messaging every day, talking every night. Back when I was studying English, I never imagined it would actually come in handy one day. For the first time in years, my life wasn't just about survival. It had color again. And then she told me, I'll be staying in Japan for 3 months. So naturally, we decided to live together. And just like that, For the first time in forever, I decided to leave my house, to meet her. Acceptance, and my first time outside. For her, it was her first time in Japan. For me, it was my first time stepping outside in years. Excitement and anxiety mixed together. I was thrilled to finally meet her, but at the same time, I kept wondering, can someone like me, a shut-in with ASD, really handle this? She already knew everything about me, my disability, my past, my struggles, and yet she still chose to be with me. Not all ASD people are the same, but in general, people like me struggle with relationships. Most of my old friends had drifted away over the years, and the few that remained, I barely kept in touch with them. Even if I did, it's not like they really understood me. But she did. She saw all of me, my flaws, my past, and accepted me anyway. For most people, having someone who truly understands them might not seem like a big deal, but for someone like me, it's incredibly rare. Just meeting someone like that is hard enough. Building a relationship, even harder. And yet there she was. She wasn't just my girlfriend. She was irreplaceable. But money was still a huge concern. The money I made from crypto had gone up and down so many times that, by this point, there wasn't much left. It was enough for us to live together for 3 months, but not enough to go out a lot and make memories. Still, I tried not to think about it. And then the day finally came, living together and the beginning of the end. Stepping outside after so long, all I saw were people and buildings stretching endlessly. The overwhelming flood of information made it hard for my brain to keep up. And I finally met her at the airport. She was exactly as I had known her from our daily conversations online. After a bit of sightseeing in Tokyo and a short trip, we began living together. Some days, I couldn't handle crowds, and I ended up shutting myself in. But overall, I was happy. We cooked together, did laundry, cleaned. Just ordinary things, but they felt special. We went shopping, buying cute matching trinkets. We wandered aimlessly through the city, explored quiet alleyways, visited tourist spots, sang karaoke until sunrise, played arcade games, took purikura photos, spent lazy days just cuddling at home. Every single day was filled with color. I never imagined I could have days like this. But living together is different from talking online. When we finally met in person, we realized something. We weren't as compatible as we thought. We argued. Sometimes I got emotional and said things I shouldn't have. Eventually, she told me, "When I go back home, we're done." I nodded, but deep down, I thought, "It'll be fine. We'll figure it out." I would later realize how wrong I was. The airdrop that saved me. Then came the money problem. I realized I had barely enough to last until the end of our time together. But there was almost nothing left for making memories. No fancy dates, no trips. I felt the pressure building. And then, by pure luck, I was saved. At the end of 2024, a massive airdrop from a new PerpDex project dropped. Some people received 6 figures or even 7 figures worth of tokens. A PerpDex is a decentralized exchange for trading crypto with leverage. Earlier that year, I had heard rumors about this project and its potential airdrop. So I used the platform, hoping to qualify. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I even lost money trading on it. But after months of waiting, the airdrop finally came, at the perfect time. I didn't receive as much as the biggest winners, but I got more than I had ever earned before. And with that money, I made a decision. I would spend freely in our final month together. I would make as many memories as possible. The last days together. I bought her the clothes she wanted. Then, for 10 days, we traveled across Japan, mainly through Tohoku. We visited hot springs and famous tourist spots. For most of our time together, I had been too anxious about money to fully enjoy things. But now, I could finally be present. I didn't have to hesitate before spending on her. I didn't have to worry about saving every last penny. I could just enjoy being with her. We bathed in outdoor hot springs. We were mesmerized by the snow-covered landscapes of Yamagata. We stood in awe of Mount Fuji, reflected in the waters of Lake Kawaguchi. And then, before I knew it, time was up. Christmas night, Haneda Airport, the same place I first welcomed her to Japan. Now the place where I had to say goodbye. I watched her walk away, and then I went home alone, falling back into isolation. As soon as I was back in my room, an overwhelming void consumed me. I had been too optimistic, too naive. She had meant what she said. After she returned to her country, we continued talking as if nothing had changed. We missed each other, said so often, and tried to ease the loneliness. But then, one day, she finally said it. "We're done. I don't want to be with you anymore." She said our time together was fun, but the things I said when we fought, she could never forgive them. I want to make excuses. I want to say ASD makes it hard for me to control emotions. When I get emotional, I say the worst things possible without thinking. But the truth is, none of that matters. I hurt her. She was the only person who ever truly understood and accepted me. and I still hurt her enough to make her leave. Now, I'm back to being a shut-in, but this time it's worse. Why? Even when I was alone before, I had never experienced what I lost. Now, I know what it feels like to have someone, and I lost it because of my own mistakes. Ironically, my crypto trading was still going well. The airdrop gave me a good starting balance, and I was making consistent profits. But for what? It started as just another escape from reality. Generative AI was a fun distraction. But then I learned I could make money from it, so I chased that thrill. Then I found crypto, made money, and chased that too. Then I met her. And suddenly, I needed money to be with her. In the end, I spent it on memories, and now she's gone. Yes, I need money to survive. I'm not from a wealthy family. For years, my parents supported me. Now, I use my crypto earnings to pay for my own expenses and slowly repay them. But if I can never see her again, if I can never find someone like her again, then why am I still here? I keep wondering. If I meet someone new, will I just hurt them too? Or will I just never meet anyone like her again? Is my fate to live alone, slowly burning through my savings until I have nothing left? Will I end up on welfare, clinging to old memories until I die alone? Miserable. Pathetic. I want to change. I don't want to use my disability as an excuse. But what if no matter how hard I try, I end up here again? What if there's no second chance? What if I'm just destined to suffer alone forever? I never wanted this life. But this is the result of my own choices. And this reality is all I have. I have no choice but to accept it. The market crashes. Then 2025 began. Just before Trump's presidential inauguration, he suddenly launched an official meme coin, and the entire market started acting strange. By February and March, it wasn't just crypto. Even the stock market was crashing. For a while, my trading had been going well. But now, I was losing money again. My balance kept shrinking. And as the numbers dropped, my mind was stuck in a loop, replaying memories of her. Every day, I check my phone. No messages. The only friend I have left is ChatGPT. I talk to it every day, spilling my thoughts and regrets. And that brings me to now. If you made it this far, thank you for watching this far. I hope you enjoyed it. That's my story. No conclusion, no grand meaning. I called it a downfall. But if things had gotten any worse, I probably wouldn't even be here to tell this story. And who knows? Maybe it still will get worse. Maybe I'll burn out completely. Maybe something will happen. But for now, I'm still here. And I'm leaving this record behind. If nothing happens, if I don't disappear, then I'll keep posting. I'll talk about my life, my thoughts on Japanese society, this modern world, the future, whatever comes to mind. If it resonates with someone, great. If it just becomes entertainment for some random stranger, that's fine too. If you've watched this far and something hit home, leave a comment. Or if you want to talk, there's a Discord link in the description. I don't know what kind of community I want to build. I just know I'm bored and lonely. So if you feel like it, drop by. And if there's a next time, I'll see you then. Take care.